Okay, with it being 2 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the City Design Review Board to order. Everyone was emailed and mailed the minutes from last month's meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review those? Any corrections that need to be made? If not, I need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our first case for public hearing today is case DRB 2023-16. It's a request for a certificate of appropriateness for removal of 2 trees from the lot located at 610 South McQueen Street, specifically identified as Florence County Tax Map Number 90075-10015, located in the D4 Timrod Park Overlay District. Staff?
Good afternoon. This is a request to remove a couple of pecan trees that are dropping debris on the owner's tenant's cars, and he is proposing that he would replace them with new trees elsewhere on the parcel. It is on South McQueen Street, right at the intersection with Spruce Street, just before you get to McLeod. This is a sketch site plan of it. It is facing north. The 2 trees to be removed are on the south property line. He is proposing a new tree in the middle of the backyard where that other X is located, and he just very recently planted a crepe myrtle in the front yard. This is the letter from him. He's requesting, do I have this in your packet, this letter?
We got it here.
Okay, I won't bother reading it all the way then. And then these are site photos. The trees on the right side of the parcel, as you can see in the picture, and then the right side of the screen is a closer picture of the 2 trees that are to be removed, that he would like to remove. So that concludes staff's report.
Okay, does anyone have any questions of staff? Anyone here to?
I have a question. As I rode around and looked at this and kind of trying to figure out what our obligation was, I was wondering, and it may not be a question for staff, but I know this is on private property. I also know what the guidelines are, but just a question, if these 2 trees were on right of way, as opposed to, what would be the city's stance on these 2 trees?
We would look at the health of the tree first to determine whether or not it's a healthy tree. As we all know, pecan trees tend to drop limbs. If there were consistent reports of damage or any serious issues, we would probably, at that point, we would consider it a hazardous tree and remove it, and then replace it with a more appropriate large deciduous tree.
Okay.
The one that is more present
Right.
compared to the street.
Yeah.
Any other questions of staff?
Another question. What if the power company or the phone company says it's got to come down? How does that process work?
Typically, they just make us aware of that, and would, if there was, again, a conflict with the power lines, they would make us aware that they're going to remove the tree, and then we try to, well, the list is very long, we would try to replace that, probably, if there was a conflict, with a smaller tree, like a crepe myrtle or dogwood or redbud or something along those lines.
Any other questions? Anyone here to speak in this matter? Having none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for discussion or a motion.
I don't know if y'all had a chance to go by there, and I try to look kind of at these kind of things. I know this is a couple of trees. It's not life or death, but we do have an obligation to enforce the design guidelines in these overlay districts. And I think it seems to me that what we have become is a rubber stamp group that lets people do whatever they want to do because they want to do it. And there's a lot of pecan trees in Timrod. And if you let somebody take a pecan tree because it's doing normal pecan things, which is dropping pecans and whatever else they do, then there would be a case to take out every pecan tree in Timrod Overlay District. And I'm all about private property and private citizens, but these people who live in this overlay district, in my estimation, in my idea, they are obligated to adhere to the requirements and design guidelines of their overlay district. And if they don't want to do that, then they need to live somewhere else. And to me, this is just these two trees appear to be healthy. They've been butchered about 25 feet high. They don't look very good because the homeowner limbed them up so high. But there's a lot of pecan trees in the Timrod Overlay District that would fall in this exact same category, some of which are right beside driveways. And I think that if you allowed people to take out every tree that's there, then the Timrod Overlay District wouldn't be what it is.
I got one question about, I don't know the language, but is there something specific about pecan trees for that district? Now, I'm only coming from where when we moved in, we had pecan trees, and it makes it really hard to grow grass, to grow other stuff, especially if they're not producing edible pecans. Like, they're kind of a nuisance. And I definitely agree with your point of just chopping them down, but if it's to replace with trees that give the neighborhood the same aesthetic, which of course it'll be 5 or 10 years before they fully grow. And then my first thought, also being that close to the road with the stormwater drainage, like you get all those pecans in the road, is that some issue as far as clogging water drains as well? So I get what you're saying, definitely, because I used to live in the historic district, about losing trees. But if we replace it with a tree that gives the same look of that neighborhood, but without all the negatives, I could definitely be on board with that.
I will say that staff, the city of Florence, through staff, we do have the ability to administratively approve the removal of trees if there's any strong evidence, reports, disease, damage in the tree. We do have that capability. So in this situation, this is a request to remove a tree that staff would not have considered a nuisance or has disease or anything of that nature. Otherwise, had the owner come to us with this, we would have administratively approved that, allowed them to take it down, and then replace it in kind at the location.
But no one answered my question. Is there anything specific about pecan trees being a part of that historic district? I know we have a pecan festival, so I didn't know if there's something about pecan trees.
Cut out pecan trees right before the pecan.
It would, a lot of towns and cities, and I think it's even within our Unified Development Ordinance, any of the large deciduous hardwoods and trees of that nature would be considered a heritage, what's often called a heritage tree. Pecans kind of fall into that category. So I wouldn't say that specific to Timrod. I wouldn't necessarily say that, other than the fact that there is an abundance of them in there. But we would just consider it a heritage tree among the district.
Did the neighbors to the right say anything? Have they said anything about it?
Yes, she called me and said she does not have a problem with taking them down.
Does she have a problem with keeping it?
She didn't say that specifically.
I mean, I almost wonder, like, if it's just like because it's putting debris on their cars. I mean, I can't really tell from the picture, and there may not be room, but just extend the driveway back a little bit more and don't park under the pecan tree. I mean, I don't know.
Or you could just limb up some of the dead limbs.
Yeah.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of the tree. 'Cause it just, I mean, that is the worst looking pecan tree I think I've ever seen. Just
Well,
you know.
The city trimmed the trees on that same street, and it doesn't look much better than what they did the other day to my tree when I came home. What happened?
That's Duke Energy coming through
Oh my gosh. They left like a chunk that was that long, like with nothing on it. I don't know. It was bad. It was bad. It broke my heart.
They're a little brutal.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just that it's putting debris on a car, then maybe rather than taking out an old growth tree, he can come up with a different solution for parking.
That, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. He doesn't, I'm looking at this site photos, he doesn't have a whole lot of room. The one in the lower left, you wouldn't be able to fit two, and you don't want to pave the whole front yard either.
Right.
And that's the problem with some of these homes, they don't have room to get to the back. You can't park at the back. And
And you
some of
wouldn't
them don't
want
even have
to pave
back
all that
doors
anyway.
of that era.
Now, with cutting the pecan tree down, did he recommend planting a tree right where that one?
No, it's
No,
it's
he's
back
showing
there.
it
Okay.
being basically the
So-
line of sight, but halfway down the yard. And then he did plant the new one in the front yard. So basically, it looks like he's willing to put it at the end of the driveway, just a little farther back, so it wouldn't affect the parking.
Did he state what type of tree he's going to plant?
He's saying new tree, flowering plum.
Longitudinal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with Scott that we don't want to set a precedent that any pecan tree can just be taken down because it's considered a nuisance because pecans are falling in the car or whatnot. But it sounds like we're all in agreement, like this is the ugliest pecan tree we've seen. And I mean, if kind of the intent's,
You're gonna have trouble down the road, because I mean, that tree's right against that concrete
That's-
driveway.
that was
It's
the
gonna start
roots.
cracking it, it's gonna start cracking.
it sounds like it could save the city a lot of issues too, whether it's stuff falling in the road, roots getting under the sidewalk or road. Like everything that y'all presented is making it better. Once that new tree is fully grown.
I think another point of consideration should be that while this is certainly on private property, there is a public value to it with it being located where it is. There is a street presence. There is value added to the public right of way with this. And it's, I just think that should be in consideration when approving the location of a proposal. Should the board consider the proposal of a alternative?
Okay. Any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve to cut down the trees.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? That's opposed. The motion carries, and the certificate of appropriateness will be issued. Our second case today is case DRB 2023-17. It's a request for a certificate of appropriateness for installation of a privacy fence around the lot located at 407 Spruce Street, specifically identified as Florence County Tax Map Number 90075-09-022 in the D4 Timrod Overlay District. Staff?
All right, this case involves a parcel that's actually just a few feet away from the one we were just looking at on Spruce Street. It involves a vacant lot, and the owner, who is present, lives on South McQueen Street. His parcel is outlined in yellow here, and then it adjoins the parcel in question, which is outlined in the red and faces onto Spruce Street. So and it's all zoned residential. The applicant has installed a 6-foot bamboo fence going back about 45 feet from the front property line and then along the front property line along Spruce Street. The Unified Development Ordinance calls for front yard fences to be only up to 4 feet tall and have 50% transparency. So permits are not needed generally for a fence as long as they meet these requirements. For something taller, it requires a variance. And then, since it's in the Timrod Park Overlay District, it does need approval from y'all for materials and appearance. So these are photos of the fence installed. It was installed inside an existing chain link fence around the front yard of this parcel. These are pictures of the interior of the yard. I believe he's using it as an entertainment area and wanted the privacy from Spruce Street. At your seats, I did receive 3 different emails from neighbors expressing concerns about visibility and the aesthetics of the fence. So there aren't really any design guidelines applicable to it, besides that in the Timrod Park Overlay District, they do require your approval for certain materials for fences, as well as the style of it. So that concludes staff's report.
Can you go back to the photos?
Sure.
And the fence itself is just on the Spruce Street side, or does it go all around the entire?
It goes up 45 feet along the
Okay.
sides, plus along Spruce Street. If it was just going to be a regular fence, a 6-foot privacy fence would be permitted from the plane of a house back. So it would have to be at least 25 feet, which is the front setback here, and on back around the rear. Across the front would only be allowed to be a 4-foot with 50% transparency.
The guidelines is 4 feet.
That's correct.
And 50% clear, right?
Correct.
So if this fence was in line, if it was 25 or 30 foot back in line with the front of the other houses, it would be allowed, correct?
With your permission for the materials.
Right, but and then it
But
wouldn't-
yes, the privacy aspect of it, it would be allowed.
Right,
if
and
we
it
need-
wouldn't block people's view up and down the street.
That's correct, yes.
Right, so the owner lives on McQueen, and this is like his backyard, this is like a back house?
Yes.
Because the lots tie together. at the very
Extension
back.
of the back.
Yeah, so I guess we've got an unusual situation where really the front yard is the backyard.
That's right. It's acting as,
2 pieces of property, correct?
It
It's
is.
Yes.
not 1 piece of property.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not tied
So
together.
it is not the piece of property where his house resides.
That's
He might
correct.
be utilizing it, but
They're
it's
2
2 pieces of
separate
property.
parcels.
Well, you can have 2 parcels and still be your house, in the land with your house.
If this was one, let's say the properties were combined, we would consider this a double fronted lot. It would, the property.
Okay.
The property wouldn't have a front and a back, it would have two fronts.
And the back would still be the back, basically.
Yeah, at the top. So if this were, let's say that we had a vacant piece of property and they're coming to build a house. We would, if they wanted to face, no matter what they wanted to do, this would be considered the front of the lot, and this would be considered the front of the lot as well. This would be considered the rear, and then everything else would be considered side.
Let's say that somebody had a house on Spruce Street and the lot went all the way back to Cedar.
Same situation.
It'd be the same situation. We wouldn't say, well, that's his backyard, but you can't put a fence along the right of way. But he can put a 4-foot fence.
Yes.
Yes.
This
50%.
50%. But he could also move that fence just back to meet the setback, and he'd be compliant.
How far, he'd have to move that with the plane of the house.
If there was a house there, it would have to match the plane of the house, and the front setback, the minimum is 25 feet.
But you look at that house on the corner,
And it's not.
and it's only set back a small distance.
That's the side setback.
But it's 2 front.
Yeah, a lot of these houses a lot of these houses are about 20 feet back from when they were built, but it would have to go with the current front setback, which is 25 feet.
I think we're going to have to get a third grade geometry student to come explain this to us, I believe. I just want to make sure they're not getting treated differently because it goes at a L like that. So that house, the house in the red is not there anymore.
Right, it looks like there's an accessory building there, but I looked, there hasn't been a house there for a long time.
I mean, the safety concern is seeing,
The visibility
coming,
from the
so-
neighbors, yes.
I would say that corner house kind of sets the precedent of, like, the minimum that this would have to meet as far as, like, you can't say that's causing a hindrance to your view, but then
But the house beside it on Spruce Street to the left, the driveway's right against it, they can't see past, when they're pulling out, they can't see down the street because the fence is blocked.
Right.
Yeah. Right there, yeah, they can't.
Point of interest, there is, if you look at the top left photograph, there's a huge pecan tree there that is hovering over someone's driveway. So remember that whenever they get tired of crap on their cars.
That's a nice looking pecan tree though, Scott.
So was the other one.
Oh, no.
At one time.
At one time.
When the guy in the letter said he limbed it up himself, had it limbed up.
He did.
Just a point of interest.
Does he have a plan to remove the chain link part of it?
I believe he said he would put the fence in front of it if you all wanted that.
My question is if for some reason, the chain link fence is sort of grandfathered in, right? Okay, so we can't really,
Can't do anything. Can't ask him to remove it.
yeah, can't. So if you took the bamboo sheets or something like that and put it on the outside of the chain link fence and lowered the fence to 4 feet, I know it would not meet the specifics of the requirements because it would be solid and not 50%. But I wonder, does that begin to address the safety concerns of the people who are complaining about safety?
Yeah, I don't think so because of your
In
visibility.
a car,
when you're
4
sitting
feet,
in a
I
car.
guess that's my point. I don't think 4 feet really gets the job.
Yeah, because you're sitting
Because
there.
there's no slab, not like it's a
Well, it's
picket
supposed to be
fence where you can
50
see.
50% transparent, right?
Right.
And
Which
I was
chain
just,
link obviously
I was
means-
just trying to see if that would be a consideration. And I don't think that would, the people who, that would mitigate one of the problems, which is the ugliness of the chain link fence. But it wouldn't mitigate the safety issue, which 4 feet still doesn't get the job done. Y'all, would y'all, I mean, I'm just trying to do math sort of.
So
like with that.
4 feet would not be high enough to make any difference unless you were in an SUV or something like that.
Wouldn't be low enough to make
Right,
a difference.
low enough, yeah.
Low
Okay.
enough.
I just wanted to kind of make that point.
One other thing I want to say is if I was on Spruce Street on either side of that and that was my front yard, that would not be what I'd want. You know, that would just not be, that doesn't go along with what's, I mean, I think about my house, you know, if I had a 6-foot fence right at the, you know, right where I came out of my driveway,
unless it was like, I mean, you see them painted white, the little border fences, but they're probably about 3 feet.
yeah, like that. Of course, it might hide something that might be worse than looking at the fence.
But theoretically, the
That
folks
neighborhood.
could take the bamboo down and keep the chain link.
Mhm.
Because, is it right? I mean, we can't make them take that chain link down because it was there,
Existing.
it's pre-existing. Is that right?
Yes,
Fair.
that's correct.
Okay, any
If
other
they
que-
wanted like some sort of privacy, they could do a fence in front of it that was 4 feet, kind of like a picket fence in front of it to buffer it, the chain link, if they were trying to hide the chain link?
What they could do is just move that solid part back 25 feet. And then if they still wanted something, they could still put a picket fence around, but you wouldn't really need it wouldn't really screen anything.
Right.
I'm sure they're
Just saying
trying
push
to
the privacy back 25 feet.
Yeah, and you lose a little bit of that yard.
Yeah.
But you get a lot more privacy and then it's not blocking anybody's view.
What's more important, the privacy or the size of the entertain.
That's the owner's call.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's the,
So you could, if they moved it back 25 feet, they could make it as high as they want to make it.
Assuming we approve more.
Well, 6 feet.
6 feet.
6 feet.
Don't get carried away.
That's not what I meant.
Any other questions of staff? Anyone here to speak in this matter?
I am the owner, so.
Okay.
you
Approach
have
the podium
it.
and state your name.
I'm Christopher Razzo, and it is my lot there, and my request for the privacy fence. So just, might be trivial, but all of the neighbors drive very high vehicles. So they can see at least over a 6-foot fence. Nobody drives something low. It just happens to be a coincidence. They might change cars in the future, but nobody on the same side of Spruce Street drives anything low. Everything is high, so their safety, they had that in mind when they purchased their vehicle.
I mean, I drive a full-size pickup truck, and the top of my truck's about 6 foot, 2 or 3, right? So I can't see over 6 foot fence, and I don't know, unless I've got a jacked up truck, I don't think it can see over a fence from a full-size SUV.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a side street, but again, I can understand neighbors being concerned with their ability to see any oncoming traffic, because some people do go a bit faster than the speed limit, so if you're not extra careful, that could be an opportunity to have an unfortunate event.
Do you have any other proposals or ideas about if this was to be denied, a way you could redo the fence to make everybody happy?
Well, certainly open to that possibility. What I had done was I had looked nearby, and I found other properties that had front yard fences at least 4 foot and were quite screening. And I thought those either have a variance or are allowed to exist. So I thought, well, if those have a chance, I'd like to be considered too. And they're all nearby. So there's a very nice solid brick wall at the corner of Pine and South McQueen on the east side. It wraps around both. On Cedar Street, just east of South McQueen, there is a large wooden fence that screens a lot, and it would have a similar effect on their neighbors. They're in between 2 front-facing homes, not at a corner, so it does exist in other places, so that's why I want to also be considered if a variance would be allowed.
Would you be opposed to moving the fence back 25 feet from the front of the property, so to speak?
Well, if that's the only option, I understand, because it's a combination, not just for my wife and I, but for the safety of anyone who lives nearby when they back up their vehicle. So that's certainly understandable. I know what I would like, but there are many people that live on Spruce Street.
Any other questions of the owner? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for discussion and a motion.
I know it's frustrating from a homeowner standpoint when you see things that exist in your neighborhood that doesn't comply with the current requirements. I think sometimes it's because those elements were built. I know the Dallas house, which has the big brick fence around it. It's not the Dallas house now. I don't know who did that, but certainly doesn't comply. I don't know if it predated the overlay, but when you see things like that, I know that's frustrating and I know that's confusing. And sometimes I think it's because they were done prior to the overlay district.
I think that was the lease.
Yes, and then sometimes I think they're done sort of in non-compliance, and either they were allowed to have it done or not disallowed. You know, but again, I can certainly appreciate the homeowner's frustration and somewhat confusion about their neighborhood and what can and cannot be done. Having said that, I think that the ordinance in this case, or the requirements in this case, are fair and in everybody's interest, and I would be in favor of whatever happens, comply with the specifics of the requirements.
I had thought that, I mean, especially since the owner is willing to be flexible. I mean, even though it says 25 feet, before I say this, I'll preface it. A very wise architect told me, be careful about just assume, like, planning for just the next 2 to 5 years when you might be somewhere for the next 20 or 25 years. But, I mean, considering that corner house is so close to the road, I mean, if there was any compromise instead of 25 feet, but then you don't want to set something in place that if that corner house came down, like now you've got a fence that's further out. But I do like following the ordinance. In this case, I mean, because you have other neighboring properties, we've always taken that into consideration. But I don't think it should be at the road. But I mean, I would be open to. I mean, whether it was 20 feet or 15 or something, but I'd be fine with the 25 feet as well.
Could you go back, before, I know we're still discussing, can you go back to the sort of the neighborhood, or maybe it's Google Maps or something that sort of gives us that? Is there any way to zoom in on that, or is that pretty much it?
Not from this.
This is good.
Okay.
Not on this one.
Not from PowerPoint.
Very
I
similar.
do think it tells the story, kind of what Brights is speaking to.
Well, the side setbacks in that neighborhood is 8 feet for a street side.
For street side?
And I guess because the one on the corner has enough, what you'd consider backyard to.
Yeah, you've
Keep
got
the
some
next
distance there. It's
driveway.
not right there.
So
What would be 25 feet? I mean, I guess that house next to the red
I
light.
measured the house right next to it. I believe it was like 22 feet from the property
house
line.
to the left.
To the left, immediate to the left, yeah.
And the setback for the house on the corner, does it face McQueen or face?
It faces McQueen.
So if something happened, you could go 8 feet from Spruce.
From the property line,
Okay.
which would be pretty much the back of the sidewalk.
This might be a return to questions for staff. But if, say they own the corner lot too, where it's only 8 feet, and then they had that one next to you, would you allow it to extend to the next lot? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, like, where it becomes a side and where it
Well,
becomes
on
a
the
front.
street sides, it has to also be 50% transparency.
And typically in, so the situations where it's not very clear as to how to determine something, like that situation, the law of the Unified Development Ordinance is the more restrictive code applies to the situation.
Does anyone have a motion they would like to propose?
I make a motion that we, in this case, abide by the stated city ordinance, primarily due to the safety of the surrounding residents.
A second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Good on.
So just to clarify, you're just asking him to move the solid privacy fence back to meet that front setback line of 25 feet, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And we can approve the fence material. Do we need to approve?
Right, so you're approving the fence material as part of that.
also has the option,
To stay at 4 foot with 50% visibility.
correct. I guess that's kind of what John was saying. We're denying the request, but how they proceed is
In conformance
in
with
conformance.
the
Right.
ordinance.
So we're not telling them what to do, we're kind of telling them what not to do.
But we are approving the material.
And you're approving the
If
materials.
if you're keeping it solid.
That's correct.
The wooden fence can be just behind where that house is at the 25 feet.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
then the chain link, I mean,
Can stay the rest of the way. Stay up.
can't,
And again, not to beat this dead horse, but theoretically, he could take the bamboo off and leave a chain link fence.
Yes.
Yes.
Which he probably will, just to keep people out of that yard, I
Right.
would think.
Certainly doesn't help from an aesthetic standpoint, but it helps from a safety standpoint.
That's,
we can cut it down to 4 and remove every other board.
That's true. That's our last case. Does staff have anything else?
no, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is November 8th. Thanks everyone for their time.
Thank you.